Hi, welcome to episode 31. It's just before 6 o'clock in the Essex countryside. Driving here from London, it was dark, so it's the first time. So the nights are closing in on us now, but I need to use the good weather to do a bit of painting, which is what I plan to do today. I've noticed, and thanks for everyone that's paying an interest in these videos, YouTube has advised me that I've now hit 1,000 views, which apparently is quite good. I don't know, but I'll take YouTube's word for that. But the reason I started that, doing these little videos, was more for my own benefit, just so that I could see that I was making some progress. Because progress on an RT is painfully slow. I do this largely at the weekends and spend about over sometimes 12, 13, 14 hours a day up here, and then over the weekend I suppose an average of 24, 25 hours a week over the weekend doing this. It is good fun, and I'll be honest with you, I've neglected this for at least 20 years, so I've got a lot of catching up to do. And next February, March, February will be the 40th anniversary of me owning this RT. I've owned this bus longer than it was actually in service with London Transport and London Country. So yeah, but there is a lot of catching up to do because there's a colossal amount of work to do on this bus. And it is a bit like peeling an onion. You know, the more you take off, the more you need to take off, and the more you need to, and so on and so forth. So it is a major project. Last week, where I left, just before I left, I was testing some wires because, as you're probably aware, those of you who've been watching, I've been rewiring the RT starting from the cab, which is the largest mass of wires on the bus. So I needed to check all of those wires, and last week I did some wire testing, and although the two wires that ran into the little turny trafficator thing were working fine, there was no problems with them, it turns out the little turny trafficator thing that was all nicely painted up unfortunately has failed. It was working perfectly all right when I parked this bus in here 30 odd years ago, but obviously over 30 years I think maybe the damp has got to it, so it's now failed. So I'm going to take it apart first, and failing that, if I can't fix it by taking it apart, then I'm going to have to go and get another one from somewhere. So anyway, yeah, stay tuned, enjoy it, and thank you very much for all of those that have recently tuned in. Is that the right word on YouTube? I don't know what it is these days, but anyway, thanks very much, and yeah, stick with us and let's see how we get on today.
Okay, where do we start? It was a bit of an action-packed weekend, it turned out to be. You notice I've stopped saying the things I want to do because half the things I want to do I never actually get done, but I'm pleased now we're sort of turning the corner with this and bits are now starting to go back on the bus. So yeah, I had a particularly long weekend this weekend. I think I started at 6, just before 6 on Saturday, left about 7:30 on Saturday, and that's in the evening obviously, on 19:30 for those of you that work in the transport industry. Got there just before 6 on Sunday and left about 8:30 in the evening on Sunday. So yeah, quite a bit achieved. However, still fiddling about with this electrical project that I've got on my hands. More of that later. This little thing is part of the electrics of the bus. It's the starter little cover that sits over the starter switch and the heater switch. Now, the lettering on these, it's not a transfer, it's actually sort of embossed into the metalwork, or stamped in, or whatever you want to call it. And the idea being is you're supposed to pop some white paint over the top, rub it off, and then up pops the lettering, as you can see as I'm doing here. Luckily I can speed this up so you don't have to watch the whole damn thing. But anyway, that's how it works. Now, I tried to do it the other day using the prescribed method that I've been told to do, and it just didn't work. Unfortunately, it is so worn out now, where the sort of the hands have been on the starter motor, that it didn't work. So what I've done is I painted it, let it dry over the week, and then I'm using some very fine wet and dry with the idea of taking it off. But as you can see, it is still not very distinct. So I've got a bit of a project on my hands now to try and get this to look right. The other panel, the one that has the the light switches and all the other bits and pieces. That has come up absolutely beautifully. This thing, unfortunately, has been a bit of a piglet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to get one of those white sort of pens, very sort of tiny pens, and I'm just going to highlight it back out again because, as I say, it's pretty worn and I don't want to put it back like that. You might also wonder it's going to look a bit sort of flat because I've grazed all the surface of the paint, but I'm actually going to lacquer it. So once it's dry, obviously, once it's wet, it looks fine. So there's the two panels. The one on the right looks really good. Okay, and here was yet another project for the cab area. This is the blind that sits behind the driver, the ones that are supposed to stop the reflections from the inside of the bus on the driver's screen at night. Although most bus drivers just left them furled down because they're absolutely a bit of a nightmare to put them back and sort of, you know, whatever. So yeah, horrible things really to put back, but hey ho. So this is the cab blind from the RT. This is some cleaning material that Mark Davis very kindly gave me and said give that a try. I'm not entirely sure if it is leather. I thought it was leather, but I don't think it is. I think it's some sort of vinyl, to be honest with you. But anyway, cleaned it up a little bit. That's a shoe polish brush, which is very good for sort of getting the cleaning stuff in the corners and getting it sorted out. So as you can see, I'm on fast forward here. You will notice I've got the pillar drill out, although I've the extension leads just underneath. It's all right, I've not plugged it in, seriously I haven't. So that's the next job on my list, is to make up some beading. So a little job there. So here we are. So just finishing off that cab blind now, before we get on with our next project. Right, abracadabra, and we are now working on the beading. This beading, by the way, I learnt a lesson when I made some for just above the blind box, and I made it up, painted it all up, and it was absolutely lovely. Went to put it on the bus, and it all went a little bit peak-tong. That was in a previous episode. Can't remember what number, but anyway, it was there. This is my little rig that I've got made up. The two blocks of wood hold the beading straight so that I can make sure that the holes are in the right place. This is my deburring tool, which creates the little groove that the top of the screw sits in. And I've got a test piece which is just down on the edge. It's a bit that came off basically, and I keep using that as to make sure that I've got the hole right. Although unfortunately I was about 1 millimetre out with the depth of the hole, so I had to go back later on and use that in the power drill. Right, now having drilled some holes in the beading, you might wonder why some. Some is because where it goes around that corner, last time when I tried to do the ones above the blind box, which have got a really severe turn on them plus a bit of a curve, I drilled all the holes and you know, in all innocence, I just got the thing straight, just drilled loads of holes all along it in the right place. And then horrors of horrors, when I went to sort of get it round to go around the corners, because I'd weakened it through drilling the holes on the corners, it went a bit like a 50p piece, and I couldn't get it right, so I had to make another piece of beading. Anyway, having learnt my lesson, the corners now don't have any screw holes in them, but luckily some of the screw holes are still in the right spot, so I've managed to make this one perfectly to that right little bit, and now I'm going to use that to take the beading round the corner, which you'll see in a minute because I've got to get the hammer out and bash it about a bit. What I'm doing now is I'm making sure it's absolutely flush with the old piece of beading, because if it isn't, we get a gap. It's a bit like I don't know, someone losing a tooth or something. There's a pretty of an obvious gap in it, so hence the reason I'm doing that. The next batch of screws that just run along the top there, which is where my hand is, I can't put in at the moment because they're a kind of machine screw. So now the next phase is to get this round the corner. Now notice I've already folded it. I've done that by hand and then offered it up to the bus. So the process that I'm doing now is just to make sure it sits really tight. You will also notice, I'll use that word notice again, you will spot that the panel just above has been removed. I haven't put it back yet. Now I'm hoping on this weekend to get that panel back in place. Now that just above that bit of wood is a lump of metal, and that's what I've been using to haul myself in and out of the cab. Right, so one of the successes of the day, if you have a look at those 5 white dots which are just running across the cab there, there's actually, I think, 7 of them. There's another 2 hidden by the flag unit. But they are machine screws with little nuts on the end. Unfortunately, they were all cream crackered, so they're going to be replaced anyway. I'll tend to replace most of the stuff. So anyway, I need to get the beading to line up perfectly with those holes. So I came up with one of my Heath Robinson plans, and what I did was I took a bit of that masking tape that you see there, and then I basically poked a screwdriver through each hole, took it off, a bit like I suppose someone does brass rubbings, and then applied it on top of the beading once I'd got the beading sort of cut to the right length. And then I've used that, and it worked surprisingly, so I was really pleased with that. So there's a little job, but I'm still got to wait for those machine screws and nuts to come in, so I can't proceed much further. But it's made so much easier without the window being in place, because with the window out I can just simply lean through in the cab, holding one end with a screwdriver and the other one with a spanner, getting the thing in place. So that's that little bit in the cab, so some progress. Right, not sure if I can call rubbing the bus down multiple times progress. When I sprayed that panel the other day with a really nice white paint, actually, that was lovely, that paint, it showed up all the little dents and nicks in it. So you can, if you look closely, you'll see the filler that I had to put in. So I had to sand it back down again and then blow it back over. And guess what? I spotted some more. It's doing my head in. Anyway, there's a bit of filling for you.
Right, it's before 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, when most sensible people are still in bed. I've really got to get a better hobby than this. Anyway, there were 3 jobs in the cab that I wasn't particularly looking forward to. I say, well, not particularly looking forward to, but more of a challenge. One of them is now putting the outer skin back on. And I want to start with this pillar here. However, there's a small problem. There's a couple of little bits on here which hold a channel in place, which are long gone. So they are basically welded onto the frame of the bus. And when I took this apart, they weren't there, strangely. So I got a bit of a plan to use the insert tool. You do find inserts on an RT. There's a few just down the side of the cab there, but they're not very common, but they are around. So I'm not exactly changing the design of the bus, but yeah, I'll use a couple of inserts for here, and I've reinforced the back of the panel so it can take the inserts. The other thing I've got is the horn and dip assembly. When I took that apart 30 odd years ago, maybe 25, 30 years ago, all 3 of the screws that held the lid in place had failed. 2 just wouldn't come out and just broke, leaving part of the screw still in the body of the bus. And 1 screw was so bad it just simply fell out. So I've had to sort that out. That's another little job for this weekend. And there was one other job, which for the life of me I can't remember. No, I've remembered it now. This thing, this turret. I put this back the other day, the indicator, did my wire testing, tested my wires. The wires into the turret work fine. Everything's okay. Wired it all up, put the new, it's refurbished, Turney trafficator thing, and doesn't work. This worked perfectly when I parked it up years ago. No problems with the indicators whatsoever. Now, of course, it's decided it's going to have park up disease, and now the damn thing doesn't work. So I'm going to try and take that apart, although it's probably not going to be a job for this weekend. If not, I'm going to have to look for another one. But hopefully I can get that one to work. But if I can't, it's going to be replacement. So anyway, they're the jobs for this weekend, for this Sunday, today. Suppose I best get on with it, hadn't I?
Right, so this little box is really quite fragile. There's a thing called chemical metal, which you can use to fill holes, and then you can then sort of re-tap the threads. it's not really very good. It's not, you know, I wouldn't use it on an engine block or something like that, but for things like this where it's not going to get a lot of use, it's probably ideal. The other thing I could probably do is to try and put inserts or some sort of like helicoil in there, but then that would reduce it down. And as you notice, it's really very thin. Now, as I was about to experience later on, yeah, it's really fragile and they fracture, so thus making it a more horrendous job. These wires in there, you might go, God blimey, Dean, you've got loads of wires in there. Well, those wires that go left to right are the ones that pass from the loom on the roof of the bus, or the roof of the cab, as it were, and then to the front where the speedo is. The ones that poke out, they are for the headlights and the horn. More on that later on. Okay, you know that moment in time when you want someone to shout stop? See, I can freeze frame this. Things were about to go slightly wrong. As I started to drill, snap. Now, you can't see that, but it's now broke. Remember I said it was fragile? So the little bit that was, I was intending to re-tap the thread on, the drills basically snapped it off. So now I've got a problem. The bit that was there has gone. So I'm going to have to retrieve what remains of it, take all my wires back out again. There's a bit of it. And I'm going to have to remake that somehow. Because it's cast, you can't weld. Cast is a really sort of specialist subject for someone that's going to have a go at sort of welding cast. So anyway, so what I've had to do is to chemi metal that as well. That's the bit that snapped. And now very carefully re-tap the threads. That's I'm using 3/16 screws, but given that I've had to do this with chemi metal, I'm going to have to use much longer screws. If you have a look at the screw, you can see that just there. It looks like a fly on that. There it goes. So the purpose of me doing this is that I get one in, having lined up the whole thing, and then I've then got the holes alongside the bulkhead, which by drilling through them, at least I then know they're in the right spot. Because obviously if you just sort of don't do it with the lid and you just guess where they are, they're not going to line up. So the ideal thing at the end of the day is they've all got to line up in place. And like I said earlier on, this was not a job that I was actually looking forward to, because it was a fiddly job. Unfortunately, having had this little bit of aggravation, it was holding another little bit for me later on, which is this moment when you go, oh blast. Anyway, horrible little job. I'm going to need to get some longer screws because they're far too short. There is the tap unit just on the outside there. You can just see that sort of the little arm just at the top of the screwdriver. So that's what you do. So your tap set. So yeah, those screws are far too short. They're not long enough. Right, it's all right for some, isn't it, on a Sunday to go off to a bus rally. I remember years back when you didn't have bus rallies in August. But anyway, here is, I don't know, I haven't featured this much actually. This is Richard Butter's AEC flatbed lorry, which he keeps in the barn, and he looks after it and takes it out quite a bit. So it's a lovely little motor. And following behind is Nick's DM999. I thought avoid saying DMS, so I always think of, doesn't matter really as far as I'm concerned now, DMSs, but you know what I mean. It's a DM, it's a crew operated one-man bus basically, but anyway, or was. So anyway, there we are. There's the two buses happily going off to a bus rally. It's all right for some to go gallivanting off to rallies, isn't it? It was Lodge's Coaches rally that they went to. Anyway, right, so this was going to throw a real curveball for me. Features two things. The horn, which is just hidden at the moment by my hand. As the horn goes there. And just above is a dip switch. Now, when I came to do the wiring for this, because I really wanted to get the wires in and the stuff connected up, it turned out to be a little bit of a horror, and I'll explain why now. Right, this was the problem. This came out of the RT, been in there for years. To explain, RTs, when they were delivered, they have obviously a lamp on the left and a lamp on the right. Now, in 1950, it was perfectly permissible to have an independent headlight for full beam and an independent one for dipped. So basically what would happen is that when the driver put the full beam light on, that would be the one by the driver's cab. That would then illuminate, leaving the one on the left hand side, which is the dipped one, also on. Now this is absolutely perfectly fine for even route masters. You can do a route master like that if you want to, for PSV service. But when the bus gets taken down to become a driver trainer, as in this case, or for other use, let's say, I don't know, preservation, or if you want to get a class 5 MOT on it, you need to have double dip headlights. So both bulbs, both lamps need to function as either full beam or dipped. Now, the reason I mention either, there's a bit of a key word there. It's a bit of a giveaway. It's a bit like a Cluedo moment. Why do you mention either? Well, basically what should happen is that when you toggle this switch, the dip lamp should go out and the full beam should come on. And that's why I assume they're done. They didn't, did they? This is the original switch. And all it does simply is just to apply power to the full beam light without taking the dipped beam out. I never noticed it, and I took that bus for MOTs as well at various places, mainly council depots, and they didn't notice it either, but both filaments would have been on. Now that doesn't give the problem for the electrics on the bus. It's perfectly able to cope with that, but it's not right. And now I've got a quandary. I can't get hold of a switch. This is the original switch, so I need to get one that fits exactly in the same place and looks exactly right. I need to have a, I think they call it a double pole switch or whatever. The same sort of thing you have on a landing. You know, when you're at your home, you can switch it up or switch it down, and it does either or. So that's the kind of thing I want, not a straightforward on-off switch. So I'm beginning to wonder if I've got to be a little bit clever with this now. And have a word with our electricians and see if we could make up some sort of relay so that when the switch is on the on position, the dip beam's on, as it were, and when it's on the off position, you know what I mean, when it's in the off position, it's then full beam. So that's something I might have to consider doing. I even cleaned the terminals up. You can just about see they're all nice and shiny, just because I've found before the terminals fur up on these things, so I made it all nice and clean. That little modification on the right hand side, that's not me, I didn't do that. That was done when they did the headlight modification. The thing is, I mean, it's easy to say it's a bodge. It's not a bodge really, it's just a job that was done to get the bus onto driver training, and they obviously didn't have a lot of time to fiddle about with it, quite rightly so, because there's a lot of work involved. So so there we are, people. Okay, so let's get back to putting the bus back together again after all those years. That nice panel is up, you notice that? It's all lovely. I was quite pleased with that actually. It was a new piece of aluminium, so it saves having to do loads of filler and stuff. So here is the bit of beading. Last time you saw that was a funny grey colour. Saturday I sort of put primer on it and undercoated it and then blew some green paint over it, so that's really nice. The other thing I've also done, although you can't see it in here, is I've applied a mastic to the other side of the panel. There's a little groove that runs along the centre on this. It's kind of ecliptical, is that the word? So yeah, which is designed to hide the screw heads and all the other bits and pieces, which sits proud. So what I'm doing here is popping it back on again. Yeah, this was also a bit of a, I don't know, it was a bit of a challenge actually to get it absolutely spot on right. And I was really pleased that when I actually offered it up to the bus, I got it almost bang on, about a millimetre shy of where it should actually be. As you can see in that picture just on the left hand side there, it was really, really close. So I was quite pleased with that, because obviously you sort of, I don't know, gain or lose or whatever in sort of pulling it round. I'd also resorted to my Heath Robinson plan, because I was on my own, of using a piece of string to hold the thing in place while I was sort of drilling all the holes and everything, so I got it spot on. So yeah, that looks really good now, and I'm really pleased with that white panel and that bit of beading. So there we are, there's the bit of beading. I have stuck some filler in where I wasn't happy, so there's a few bits, so you can see my sticky marks there. Right, so now let's get this bit of the bus back in. I'm using some mastic here. This is the same sort of stuff you use in your bathroom, or perhaps not actually, this stuff. It's got no silicone in it. Avoid silicone like the plague. Don't get silicone. It really causes problems with paint, so don't touch it. So that's to prevent any water ingress. So if it rains, water, RTs actually, they do let water in, unfortunately, despite all the mastic in there. They used to use some sort of putty stuff, which is no longer available. I imagine probably the EU banned it. This is just as good anyway, so yeah, shove that on. Some is also adhesive, so do be a bit careful if you're actually doing it. You want one that you can actually get off afterwards, because the last thing you want is a panel like that, which is irreplaceable, and you know, you can't get the damn thing off. But it's not helped by this panel being quite fragile. So yeah, so I didn't. Some bits of it has started to sort of corrode slightly. So I had to do work on it to get it right. So yeah, so wouldn't be a good idea putting that back on with some sort of adhesive sealant. Anyway, there we are. Now I needed to get that back in. One, to restore my pride in the cab. And secondly, as I may have mentioned, where I'm putting that little grippy thing on, they're my brother's. Thanks very much, Daryl. These little grippy things, which are brilliant actually. So I'm pulling the panel back in so I can get the holes to all line up. So yeah, so where that little grippy thing is, there's a very nice handle there, and the handle runs through the frame of the bus. Now that was going to pose a little bit of a problem later on. Thankfully, I didn't bore the pants out of you by filming it, but yeah, so just in that bit we should have a little sort of cast handle. So that's now going to be my method for hauling myself back in the cab. I'd painted that frame around the window. You see that black there? I'd painted that, and the next week I'd gone up and I clambered in the cab, grabbed a hold of it, and you know what happens now, didn't you? It spoilt it. So I had to get the spray gun out and then respray the frame again. So there's a lot of this stuff which is duplication of effort, which is horrible. Also, you may notice, or maybe not, I don't know, just at the edge there, that bit on the extreme right hand side, that should actually be the colour of the cab, not green. So I'm going to have to paint the very bottom of that in brown, and then the very top of that in black. But it was easier to do it that way. One, until it's actually in the bus, you're not going to get the lines dead accurate. And secondly, it's so much easier to use just one colour and shove one colour on there, so much easier to do it, and then we'll do it later on. And I have actually, if you notice, it's a little bit flat looking. That's because I've already rubbed it down. I'm using a cloth as well to make sure I don't mark the paint on that pillar. So there we are. So a lovely little job. So let's finish on Sunday. Home time now. So well done. Thanks very much everyone for watching, and I look forward to putting the next one together. Stick with me, and here's some other ones you might find remotely interesting.